I appreciate everyone's time. Again, my name is Jason Sayen. I work for LK and Associates. I'm Director of Sales and Business Development. We're a manufacturer's rep firm here in the state of Florida, and we represent multiple brands of high-end technology solutions and work with companies like the team at Boca Technology. I'm going to have to reprogram my brain to say that, but we work with them closely to train and help specify and design a lot of projects, many of which some of you have been a part of or will be in the future. So today's course is called Dedicated Theater Design, and this is an AIA and ASID provider course. So as you know, you guys will be getting credits. As Jeff said, once my presentation is complete, you are free to exit and you will still earn your credits. You're going to receive a follow-up email with links and the information to sign up and able to get your certificate. So make sure you're on the lookout for that and you take care of that. But you will be getting credits for today's class. These classes are sponsored by Cedia. Cedia is our trade organization in our industry. We do annual trade shows every year. This year it's virtually, but they're also an education provider. And I'm a Cedia outreach instructor. The goal is to educate the various trades that are involved in the projects that we are a part of. And so we're really happy to be presenting these classes to you. One thing that I've said before, and I'll just kind of reiterate, like any of these topics we talk about, getting us involved as early as possible. And by us, I mean the integrator partners like Boca Technology and Automation, can really help us make your clients' dreams possible. Unfortunately, we're typically the last trade on the job. And so with that, we get brought in very late in the project. And doing things like a dedicated theater is very difficult if we can't be involved in the planning processes. So although I love the information we present on each of these, the common theme is if you're partnered with an integrator like Boca Technology, use them as a resource to get questions answered even early in the process, because it'll help us help you achieve those goals. So what is a dedicated theater? So it could sound like a simple question. I think what a dedicated theater is has changed over the years. Dedicated theaters became very popular when surround sound formats became mainstream and receivers were able to reproduce 5.1, but it's gone way beyond that. A dedicated theater is simply put a dedicated space to watch a movie. A lot of times people get them confused with media rooms or with something down here that's popular called club rooms. And although those spaces can be converted to watching movies, dedicated theater is something completely different, right? A dedicated theater is a space where somebody can watch a movie the way it was meant to be seen by the director and the producers. And with that comes a lot of things we have to consider. Lighting, electrical, safety, comfort, the design, acoustics. There's so much that goes into it, and that's what this course is going to really uncover today. So learning objectives for today is to talk about the attributes of a dedicated home theater. What are the main things that you need to understand when it comes to talking about a dedicated theater? And kind of an example I'll use is partnering together. If you're working on a project and you hear the client say, I want a dedicated theater or space to watch movies, that's your first kind of red flag that you should reach out and get us involved, because we can help prep you with the right questions to qualify what that means.
A participant
so
has
that
joined the
we can start
meeting.
designing things properly. We're also going to talk about the science of good sound in a home theater. Just because you've chosen high quality components doesn't mean it's going to sound good, and we'll dive into that. We're going to talk about some common mistakes, and these mistakes can be costly. Again, because we are usually the late trade-in on the project, bringing us in late can actually end up costing a lot of money. If your client's expecting one thing and the project's moved too far along, we have to go back and redo stuff. We're going to talk about specific considerations. So video optimization, lighting, electrical, safety, comfort. These are things that a lot of times people don't consider, but they're very important to consider, especially early on in the design phases. And then we're going to talk about some new technologies with video and audio that are kind of happening out there. As most of you know, technology is changing fast. We're changing our phones every 2 years, our computers, our laptops. Again, another reason to partner with an integrator so that we can keep up or help keep you up to speed with what's changing. So defining a home theater, it's a room with the sole purpose of transporting viewers for entertainment. So by transforming, client comes home from a long day at work or dealing with what we're with today, they want to go into this space, shut out the outside world, and really get immersed in the movie. You can only do that with a dedicated theater. It's free of distractions. It's near perfect from an acoustical perspective. The video system is set up to be seen exactly how the director wanted it. Most directors or people in the video industry have dedicated theaters simply to watch what they're producing, right? And so that's what a dedicated theater is. Again, a lot of times people mix these up with media rooms or club rooms or multi-purpose rooms. And of course, these rooms can be converted to a movie theater-like setting. I've seen rooms that have floor-to-ceiling windows, and at the push of a button, drapes come down and turns it into a theater. You're going to have some sacrifices with that, as opposed to a dedicated theater. But it's important you understand the differences. We want the superior audio and video reproduction, which is what the director was looking for, and make the client feel like they're in a true movie theater. So with that being said, these are kind of the 6 pillars or attributes what make up a theater, and each one of these we'll dive into further detail. They all drive towards the singular purpose, which is a dedicated theater. So one thing is sound isolation. And what I want to point out is this is different from sound treatment. Sound treatment has to do with materials and things that are put into a space to make it sound better. Sound isolation is isolating sound from an environment. So there is actual CE course coming up here, I think in 2 weeks, taught by one of my associates. And that focuses solely on sound isolation. When you're in a theater room, you don't want to hear the air conditioning system of the house. And incidentally, when somebody's watching a movie, you don't want to hear explosions on the other side of the house. And that's all handled through proper sound isolation. And we'll talk more about that a little later in the presentation. Optimized audio performance. So first and foremost, choosing good products. Also choosing good placement of those products. Speaker placement is very critical. And then also, possible acoustical treatments like we talked about and I mentioned, and we'll again go into that a little further. And then optimized video performance. Just having good audio has to match up with the video. So choosing the right screen, choosing the right type of projector, and then choosing the two that actually work well together. And combined with audio and video, which isn't a pillar but equally important, is seating. And again, hopefully you stay on for the presentation by Alvin and his company, because they make high performance seating for theaters. And that's the other part of it. If the client is in the right position, comfortable, the audio and video start to merge as one. Another important factor that people don't think about is lighting. Yes, it's important to have a dark space for your theater, but there's safety protocols with lighting, but there's also some kind of ambient effects. Electrical requirements. Again, you have a dedicated space, and certain projectors require possibly 220 volts, depending on which projector you're using. There's going to be a rack of equipment in there. You're also, there's other factors. So again, making sure we have the right electrical requirements. And then lastly, safety and comfort. So again, comfort, we come back to that discussion around seating, but safety as well. If you're sitting in a dedicated theater that's totally isolated from the house, you want to make sure you have ways of being notified if an alarm's going off, like a smoke alarm or burglar alarm, or if somebody's on your property. Also, air conditioning. If this is a dedicated space and you're watching a movie, you want to make sure you can keep that temperature optimal. So as you can see, a lot of factors that go in, and within each of these are even more design considerations. And this goes above and beyond what typically happens to us is someone gives us plans and says, there's your theater room, design a theater, and knowing that everything else around the space has already been decided upon. So you want to begin with the end in mind. And by that, I mean, all of this resides around the type of seating or how many people be in the space. So the dimensions of the space doesn't always dictate how many people can sit comfortably. There's a lot that goes into this decision. So is this just for movies? Are they going to listen to music? Will they be playing video games? That's an important factor that we have to start with before we actually design the theater. Other things is what's the decor going to look like? You know, a lot of times the theater's designed completely different from the rest of the house. So the rest of the house could be this ultra minimalist modern design, and the theater might look like a scene from Jurassic Park because the client wants to really express their love for movies. We've seen all kinds of theater designs from Star Trek to you kind of name it. So understanding the decor and the theme is also going to help dictate a lot of different decisions. The lighting in the space, you know, as you can see here, there's lighting for the risers and stairs. There's also lighting on the sides for sconces. You know, we don't want lights to go on when somebody wants to get up and go to the bathroom. So can we light the space properly without disrupting the movie, but keeping that safety aspect? And then, you know, other physical characteristics is, you know, who's watching this? You know, we talked about how many people, but also, you know, we've designed theaters for, you know, NFL pro football players. Well, those are big people. Are they going to be having their teammates over? So what size seating do we need? Is it a retired couple? Is there disabilities? Again, all these are factors starting with the end in mind of what that experience is supposed to look like, from how they use it to who's actually using it. The science of room physics and kind of human perception. So a lot of times clients think if they choose great products, right, high-end electronics, high-end speakers, high-end projector, high-end screen, that's like 90% of the theater, and it's absolutely not. If you choose all those right things, but they get installed improperly, or the rest of the theater is not designed right, you're really only getting about 50% of the value of those products. So the actual design and acoustical treatments and other things to consider related around room physics is extremely important. Understanding the difference between treatments and sound isolation, and again, is another important factor. And so with that, I want to take a look at this screen that a lot of people aren't aware of. So if we were all to remain quiet for about 10 seconds, each of us would have a certain level of ambient noise in our spaces. I have an AV equipment rack here in my office, and it can be quite loud at times because there's fans and things like that. If the air conditioning's on in your house, that's going to generate noise. But if we will all remain silent for a few seconds, the actual level is possibly going to be no lower than 33 decibels. And let's not get stuck on the decibel ratings, because there's things about a jet engine is 115 dB, and that's very subjective, so to speak. But the fact remains that if we're all to remain quiet, we're all going to have at least 33 dBs or more of noise in our room. So when you look at a theater, movies are mixed and designed to have passages that are as quiet as 22 decibels. So if you've ever been in a situation where you're watching a movie in your living room and somebody says, hey, turn it up, I can't hear that, and then an explosion happens and you have to turn it down, that's what we're referring to. Our goal when designing a theater is to isolate the sound, right, the outside noise, so that our minimum level is lower than the soundtrack. That allows us to hear the movie the way it was meant to be recorded. It also allows us to not have to vary the volume constantly throughout the movie. And so sound isolation is a very important factor. There's a few ways that we isolate sound from a room. You may have heard of a theater being designed as a room within a room. And that's where literally you're given a room which is framed, but then inside of that, you actually reframe another room. And that's one way of isolating. You can do things like called double sheetrock. You can change the positioning of studs to isolate sound. You can use special types of sheetrock that dampens sound. And again, a lot of this will be in detail in that next class about sound isolation. But the whole goal is to keep the noises out, so the noise level inside the theater is extremely low. On the flip side, if you have, you know, people sleeping in other areas of the house, you don't want that theater to disrupt their sleep. So you're isolating to keep sound from coming in, and you're isolating to keep sound from going out. And this is an often overlooked factor. A lot of times someone will say, oh, you're giving me a space to put a theater. Great. Yeah, we'll make some really nice treatments, and we'll put some seats in, and we'll choose great equipment. The isolation is by far one of the more important factors. So common mistakes that people don't think about when doing theater design is sound reflections. So Speaker manufacturers, most high-end speaker manufacturers use a space in their engineering department called an anechoic chamber, which is basically a room with zero reflections. They're very eerie. I've never been inside one, but I've heard about it that, when you play the speaker, you hear it. And it's very, very difficult and would be very expensive to replicate something like that for your theater. So there's other ways to treat that, but most people do not consider sound reflections. Everything from the type of materials you choose to finish the room in, if you have windows or tile floors, reflective surfaces, again, having high quality equipment is important, but if you don't treat the reflections, it's going to take away from the performance. Ambient noise we just spoke about. A lot of times that's not considered. So somebody puts a rack full of AV equipment in the theater and there's no way of cooling it properly, which means you end up with a lot of excessive fan noise, which takes away from the sound and raises the ambient noise. That leads to intelligibility of the dialogue, right? You want to be able to hear those quiet passages without having to turn up the volume. And then lack of expertise. Just because you're working with an integrator and just because they can do a control automation system does not mean they're specified as a theater designer. In fact, Cedia, our trade organization, has certifications for theater designers. And that is something you should consider when you're working with someone, and a dedicated theater is part of that. Make sure that they have some sort of a certification, or they have a space that they can demonstrate for you and actually show you what they're capable of. So my performance, again, we've talked quite a bit about sound, and without getting kind of too nerdy here, this is kind of a sound wave. But again, what I mentioned earlier, this anechoic chamber. So when a speaker's played in a room with no reflections, you get what's called a flat frequency response. Everything's arriving at the ear without any reflections, and that's the goal you're looking for. And so in a room, it's very, even if you give us there's no right size space. A rectangular room, regardless of size, is going to have imperfections. And we have software available where we can take measurements and we know where there are going to be problems. And then we can treat that with acoustical treatments and seating position. So, waves reflect off of walls, floors. They create peaks, they create valleys. If you've ever been in a theater or listening area where it sounds better in one area than another, again, we can take care of that and treat that so that all seating positions sound equal. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to minimize the, hey, can you turn that up? I couldn't hear it, which people just think that could be the variance in levels of hearing from the audience, but most likely it's just because of not optimizing the audio performance. So one way to treat that is through acoustical design. And again, as designers and architects, you may think that this is going to impede on your overall goal. And with proper planning, we can help make sure that we don't impede the design. So the before space here is basically behind the scenes, right? If we were to take away the fabric on the walls, you may not realize, you may think those are drywall walls painted or wall paper, but those are actually fabric walls. And behind that, you see the speaker placement. You also see other things such as the dispersion panels, which are used to kind of break up nulls. And you also see other panels, the squares that are under the before, are basically meant to absorb sound. Again, through some software that we have, as well as experience, we know where to place these types of products. And then you see the various speakers scattered throughout. We'll talk more about how many speakers and placement a little bit later, but I think it's nice to see the behind the scenes to understand the prep work and engineering that goes involved in the various types of designs. One thing that's not mentioned much in this presentation, I'll point out, is you see at the back of that room, you see the door, the entrance to the theater. That's another common problem we have, is we're given a space to design and then we're not allowed to choose the exit or entry point. And if you've ever gone to a movie theater, you always know that the actual exit door is isolated from the front, and that's done on purpose. People can get up and leave and come back without disrupting. And that's, again, another goal you want. A door at the front by the screen is the worst possible position because now you're disrupting the viewing experience. You have light coming in, You can see the person get up and open the door. So that's something that's important that's not quite talked about here, but that entry point to the theater space is really important. So now we're going to get into kind of audio technologies. And so, you know, a lot of surround sound formats started with Dolby, Dolby Digital, and they were built around what's called a 5.1 surround sound system, which most of us have probably experienced. So a couple things, the numbers relate to the number of speakers. So the first number is how many main speakers there are. So in a 5.1, you have 5 main speakers. You have a left speaker, a center, a right, and you have your 2 rears. Usually the center speaker is where a lot of the dialogue comes from. So again, when people are on screen and talking, it sounds like they're directly in front of you. Your left and rights are kind of for ambience to widen your sound stage to create the experience of how wide the space is. And then the 0.1 is the subwoofer or number of subwoofers. We have many systems that have multiple subwoofers. So 5.1 is 5 main speakers with a subwoofer. And built upon top of that now are systems that are using everything from 9 to 13 main speakers. So these are layers that add on and give you a more immersive experience. So they add height to the actual movie. So instead of seeing the movie and really feeling like you're in the space, now we're adding dimension from an audio perspective, and giving that more realistic type of sound, almost like 3D like. And so again, there's other layers where we keep adding more from 9.1, 10.1, 11.1, 13.1. Again, that's where you want to work with a theater designer and an integrator who's well versed in this technology so they can help choose the right option. And lastly, so now we have also in Dolby Atmos, which is another type of surround sound format built upon Dolby, is another delineator, which is how many in-ceilings or upward firing speakers you can use in your Dolby Atmos setup. So you have your main speakers, then you have your subwoofer, and then you have that height layer that they're talking about above. So a lot of advancements in audio technology and a lot of things to discuss early on in the planning stages. Video optimization, again, we have a space with set dimensions. That's going to dictate the size screen we can have and also the type of video projector. And the two go hand in hand. We've had clients come to us where they're fixated on a certain type of projector because they saw it at a friend's theater, but then they want a different type of screen and they may not work together. It's simply impossible to just choose the screen, choose the projector, and position and calibrate the projector to work together. If you do that, you're going to sacrifice something. So for example, on the right, you can see the projector is at the very far back of the room. And in fact, in this case, it's probably in an adjacent room firing into the main theater. If you choose the wrong projector, it may have to sit directly above the seating area, which takes away from the design, also adds a ton of ambient noise to the space. So again, when you want to optimize the video experience, it's important that we consider all factors: the room size, the room shape, picking the size screen, and then making sure the right projector fits with that screen. And we haven't even gotten to talk about the type of image we want to view, whether it's 4K Ultra HD or just 1080p, or the aspect ratio of the screen. But the two need to go hand in hand, and there's a lot of factors that go into deciding that. Other things too is, do you want the screen to be fixed where it's always visible, so when the system's off you see the white or gray material, or do you want the screen to be hidden and motorized out of the way? Or do you want curtains to kind of go in front and really make it look like a movie theater? Again, lots of things to consider when you're making these decisions. So when it comes to the latest technology, simply put, how many little dots do you want to have? So standard definition uses a pixel rate 576. That's how many dots are on the screen. HD, which was our first delve into really a big advancement in video, is 720. Full HD is known as 1080 or 1080p, which has been around for quite a while. And 4K Ultra HD is almost double that amount. So it's a much better picture. We're finally getting to the point where we have lots of content in 4K. A lot of times when these new resolutions come out, it's great to have a screen and system that can reproduce it, but there's not enough content. Now we have lots of content, whether you're streaming it or it's dedicated content. And of course, there's talk about 8K, right? There's already TVs out there that are 8K. There's not a lot of content around 8K. So, but understanding most of your clients are going to want, 4K. But again, there's lots of discussions that go around that. There's different projectors that are able to do and reproduce 4K. However, there are pros and cons with the different options that are available. So lighting design and placement. And I'm not monitoring the chat window, so I'm assuming if there's questions, fire away. But lighting design and placement is another important factor. You need to design lighting that is just meant for when the room is on. And if you're going to be using the room for music listening or gaming, you may not want it dark. So you want to make sure lighting is chosen for those different environments. And again, using a control system, we see like a little touch panel here. The lights can be tied to the control system. So if you hit a scene called, gaming, the lights that are set for gaming at the right dim level are going to come on along with the screen and the projector. When you have a movie theater scene, it changes everything appropriately. And then when you have something dedicated to music listening, again, that's going to make another change. So all that does tie into the control system. But lighting design and placement, equally important. You need to have main lighting for the room dedicated to how you want to use the space, but also accent lighting. Even in a movie theater, it's completely dark, but there is dim levels of light in the space. And placing those lights in the right spot so they don't take away from the viewing experience is important. Also, from a safety perspective, having lighting in place so people can, see where the stairs and risers and the exit location is. Electrical need is another important factor that we want to consider. Again, you're going to have dedicated equipment most likely in that space, and that's going to have its own type of electrical requirement. Certain projectors require 220 volts versus 110, so that's something, again, we have to plan for accordingly. And then we have to look at the other factors or other electrical needs, wall outlets that are placed strategically for additional items. I've seen clients that have a theater where they can quickly set up and have a band perform at the front of it, which again, you're going to need to plan to have electrical outlets and plugs and things to plug that equipment into. So planning accordingly on the electrical side, equally important. And safety and comfort. And we talked about this a little bit already, but things like a dedicated smoke alarm in the space, but also notification for a smoke alarm in another area. And that could be something simply pops up on your touchscreen for your automation system. I've seen companies install a small light somewhere in the space. And again, tying through the automation system, maybe you have a light that's WRGB, and if a smoke alarm is going off somewhere in the house, that light turns to red and slowly dims and flashes. There's a lot of really cool things we can do. Telephone doorbell notification. Maybe you want the movie to be interrupted, and if somebody rings the doorbell, literally the camera for the front door shows up on the screen. That's something that we can do. But again, having that a way to be notified when you're in this dedicated, isolated space. And lighting we already talked about. And again, when we're talking safety and comfort, it's that lighting that helps us get into and out of the space safely where people aren't tripping over things. And then seating as well. A lot of the experience has to do with audio, also video, but the actual seating comfort is another thing that really ties everything together when you're watching that movie. Final product. So we've talked about all these different considerations. Now let's look at some examples that kind of apply, some of the various techniques. And so that's really what it's all about. Based on what the client's expectations are, what their goals are, how they're going to use the space, here's where we come up with this design. So a couple of things I'll point out on this example here is we see curtains to the left and right of the screen. So this is utilizing a fixed screen, and the client has the ability to close the curtains to make it look very similar to a movie theater. It looks like they have speakers on the left and right side. Probably because of the type of ceiling choices, they didn't want to do in-ceiling speakers. On or in walls are typically better anyways. And then you'll see some light tan squares and rectangulars scattered throughout. And these are basically acoustical treatment products that are treating the sound in the space. Another thing we didn't talk about is, when it comes to seating, here we have dedicated theater chairs, but at the back we kind of have this like snack bar counter, which gives a different type of experience or different use of the space. And we've seen this becoming more and more common, where now you have another type of seating area and another way to use the space. So looking at that, here is another example of a theater, and there's a couple things I want to point out. You can see the various acoustical treatments. Here they chose to expose them. So if someone's real techie or modern, they may want to actually have the acoustical treatments visible versus hidden in one of the other photos, and that's okay. The goal is the same. But the other thing I'll point out that we didn't talk about is when it's looking at screen selection, this screen here is a fixed screen, but it's utilizing an aspect ratio called 2:3:5. And this is very similar to how actual movie theaters view the screen. Many of us haven't been to the movie theater in a long time, but if you recall, when you go to the movie theater and the show starts, it's called masking is changing on the sides of the screen to give you a different viewing of the picture. And we can replicate that in home theaters. That's going to require a certain type of screen, also require a certain type of projector. And again, another reason to work with an integrator to help with that design. But you can see you get a much wider experience that's much more realistic. A view from the front of that same theater. So again, you can see the theme of the acoustical treatments. You can see the lights on the risers. You see that the entrance or exit is at the back. In this case, it looks like the projector is in the space. There's probably a good reason why they did that. It's always better to hide it if you can to minimize the ambient noise. But again, this is just kind of showing you some of those real world examples. And lastly, this is a really cool design. Again, incorporating different ways of using the space. So this door is on the side and they're seating at that level. And so maybe that helps with maybe elderly people or handicapped people that are going to be using the space. They don't have to go through steps, but now we still do have those risers. So people are viewing things at different levels. And then at the back, again, we almost have like a restaurant pub type feel where we have a booth with a table and then we have some individual seatings with a counter. So again, the theater just doesn't have to be this, potentially stale seating area, right? We can actually take the theater and make it more into a multi-use space, which is much easier than doing it in reverse, which is taking a multi-use space and turning it into a theater. You'll also pay attention to all the different types of accent lighting. There's LED lighting below the risers, so it's a less obtrusive type of light where the stairs just kind of light up, and that lights up the entrance and exit. And then, of course, you have main lighting coming from the ceiling as well. This is the view from the back. So in this case, they decided to incorporate a fireplace. So again, this is almost more of a multi-use space, but it's pretty cool. And then in this case, the screen is what's called a 16:9. So 16:9 is your aspect ratio that pretty much all TVs are. And so again, you can see the difference between that and the 2:3:5 that was chosen elsewhere. So we're getting up on the end here. So summary discussion, we talked about how important sound isolation was. That's probably one of the most important factors, which is why it's number one. So this keeps the soundtrack in and distracting noises out, which is extremely important. Optimizing the audio performance, again, working with a professional, possibly someone that's certified in dedicated theater design, they're going to optimize the sound of the room. Excuse me. And then video performance, making sure you get the right color, reflections, seating, all these different types of factors that affect the video performance. Lighting, again, we've talked about lighting quite a bit, and it's extremely important and often overlooked in a design. The electrical requirements, again, theater designs are going to require different electrical. Another reason to bring us in early before electrical plans are finalized so we can help ensure we have the proper requirements. And then safety and comfort, again, another often overlooked factor. There's nothing worse than when a client's sitting in their theater but then has no idea what's going on in the outside world, which is an important safety factor. And if it's not already obvious, again, proper planning is extremely important for all these reasons above. So that is it for my presentation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then see if there's any questions. And if not, we're going to turn it over to Elvin and Jeff. And again, if you're just interested in the CEU credits and want to log off, you can do that. You'll get a follow-up email to complete what you need to earn the credits. But if you'd like to stay on and take a deeper dive into seating and some of the technologies, and again, more importantly, how that plays into theater design, please stay on, and I'll kind of turn it over from there.
Well, thanks a lot, Jason. Before we transition over to Alvin, I just wanted to throw out there that we do have a reference Dolby Atmos 9.4.4 system here at BTA that if anyone wanted to come and experience it personally, I would open the doors for you anytime. And I'm showing on the screen our plans. This was built in what used to be a safety deposit box or safety deposit room vault for Wachovia Bank back in the day. So we have 18 inches of poured concrete around it. So sound isolation wasn't really an issue for us. So I'll just kind of scroll through this so you can see we did a 2:3:5 aspect ratio, which is the widescreen that Jason was referencing. And so that's your left, center, right with 4 subwoofers. This is playing through acoustically transparent screen. We also have the motorized drapery track on the front. It's a little more traditional look. This is the side view. The other side, I'll just kind of scroll through real quickly. In the back, we isolated the projector in its own separate booth, so there'd be no ambient noise from the projector. It's a very large laser projection system shooting 160 inches across the room. And you can see the sides. We've got 2 rows of seating with a bar in the back, and then here you can see the projector in the rear of the room shooting through optical glass, so that keeps it nice and quiet. The equipment rack is not in the room, so that there's no noise from the equipment. And we also have a security door which provides excellent sound isolation entering into that room. So it's actually a ballistic door. And then we also are using electrical power isolation. So we're actually running all the electronics on battery, which keeps it very, very clean. I'm just kind of scrolling through this real quickly, showing you the we didn't really have a choice where the door was, so we had to do a step up and then a step down for the front row and rear row, and it was a curved room which we squared off, and then finally down that's the security door. But back in the at the very end here, you'll see what we did for the lighting design, where we isolated lighting over the seating so you could have nice ambient lighting on, but it's still dark up front and no shadows being casted. So anyway, I just kind of show you what that's about, and like I say, invite anybody that would like to come and listen to a reference Dolby Atmos theater and experience it for yourselves. We're open 6 days a week. So with that, why don't I pass the ball over to Alvin, and you could go through some luxury seating.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Hi, everyone. Pleasure to meet you. My name is Alvin Helmans. I'm the president and founder of Scenic Luxury Seating. So we are a custom manufacturing and design company based in Belgium. Our main goal is, or our main drive for the business is to provide very comfortable, aesthetically pleasing home entertainment seating that can be used in multiple parts of the home. The goal for today is to quickly kind of go over a couple important parts that we see as a seating manufacturer that are very important in the design of the theater. I'd like to talk to you about the comfort and performance. Those are mainly met through the importance of motorization and optimized seating layouts. And then kind of go over a couple trends that we see in today's home theaters. Number one, the use of dedicated theaters, as Jason mentioned before, it's starting to look a little bit more like multiple purposes are used in the theater as well versus just watching movies, and then kind of quickly show you a couple of different seating styles that we have seen that have become very, very popular. So the first thing is the importance of motorization. When watching a movie for 2 to 3 hours, obviously the comfort is very important. You know, you might have the most incredible theater, audio, video focused, but at the end of the day, if the person or the user is not comfortable sitting there for 2 to 3 hours, then that's obviously going to be an issue. One of the most important features is what's called an articulating headrest. Pretty much what that allows you to do is that when you're all the way reclined or inclined, you're pretty much, you know, staring at the ceiling, but the screen's in front of you. So you need to have the ability to adjust the headrest to provide proper comfort. If you don't have that feature, you know, you might have to use some pillows or some blankets in order to make up that difference where the backrest is and where your head should be. And if you don't use that, then you might have, you know, neck pains, back pains, all of that stuff. So, but one very important feature here is that articulating headrest that allows you to provide the proper head support. Usually that's available either manual, where, you know, the user reaches back a little bit and brings the headrest forward, but it could also be motorized as well. Then the other important part about motorization, obviously, again, it's that personal comfort. The key, I think, is that every person has their own personal comfort levels in terms of how they would like to sit in a seat. So really what's important is the importance of the ability to adjust the seats to your preferred seating position. So, you know, the footrest extend, the backrest goes back, the seat can be lowered and slides forward, and you have the articulating headrest. Again, the key is that the user gets to control those 3 different motors independently. What you'll see on the bottom left is just kind of a regular sofa. You know, you're pretty much restricted to just sitting up or laying down. You don't really get to decide on what you want that most comfortable seating position to be. The image on the right is kind of a reference of, you know, the different seating positions that can really go towards your own personal comfort in order to sit there for a long and extended time. Here was actually going to be a video, but the video was not going through very well. So what I wanted to show is on the top left, you know, this is an example of a motorized sofa. When it's all closed, it just looks like a regular sofa, but through technology, by bringing in motorization into this chair, you can actually turn it into a comfortable entertainment chair. So the picture on the top right, what you see is the actual backrest that rises up and down. So it allows the user to adjust the height of the backrest. Not everybody has the same height. Everybody has personal preferences. So the nice thing about this motorized backrest is that you can allow it to go up and down. The bottom left picture then shows that the footrest actually comes out. And the bottom right picture shows that the whole entire chair goes forward. So again, with those 3 different motors, you can easily get to a certain position that is most comfortable for your use. The next thing is this optimized seating layout. As Jason mentioned, you know, the seating is very important in the theater, and what we always suggest is that it's the first step is to design the room about the seats. We do see a lot of instances where we do get, you know, inquiries for projects, and we open the CAD file, and this is what we see. So what you see on the left side there, for example, is, you know, a room that was, you know, planned to be built with a, you know, door on the top left, and the riser was only about 5 feet. The steps were only 2 feet and 4 inches. You know, there's no way you can actually put a fully motorized sofa into that. As you can see on the picture on the right, you'll see the back row, you'll see the front row. When the footrest comes open, you know, the backrest goes into the front row. So, you know, not very good in terms of laying that out. The key is to make these changes initially, because once the room is built, it's too late. So it's very, very important. What we kind of did here is just we kind of gave you kind of an overview of what it shall not look like, and here you can see what it should look like. So the bottom left, you'll see, you know,
Alvin, let me interject there. One other flaw with that is in the wrong one, if you will, is that the seats are right against the back wall. So maybe you could talk to that as well.
Yeah, exactly. So the goal is to not have the seats go all the way against the back. This is mainly because of acoustical purposes. So what we've done in the next one right here, for example, you'll see in the image on the right, we've made the riser a lot deeper, so the chairs can fully go inclined, and also to get the chairs away from the back wall. The back wall there, if you put the seats against the wall, that is the worst location when it comes to acoustics. You know, again, the key is to bring those away from the wall. and obviously have enough space for the walkways as well. So usually when you plan this and your client says, you know, we want to build a theater, you know, what are some of the things that we have to keep in mind? You know, the riser depth, the walkway width are very important. We've put a couple, you know, suggestions here. You know, 7 inches or I'm sorry, 7 or 8 feet is always preferred if possible. And in terms of the walkway, 3 feet at least in order to meet, you know, local code and have proper walkway available there as well. The second one that's very important is the sightline analysis. So what we're showing right here is pretty much, you know, you have 2 rows of seating. Obviously, the back row is against the wall. But when you look at it from a side view perspective, you see that the user in the back, whether they're inclined or sitting upright, they're not able to see the screen fully. They actually are looking to the person sitting in front. They see their head. They don't have, you know, perfect clear viewing. And mainly that's because of the position of these chairs. Also, the height of the risers are very important. What you can see in this particular instance here, what we have suggested here is obviously we move the chairs away from the back wall, but also increase the height of the risers. This is a very important thing. You know, once this whole entire theater is built and somebody sits in the back row, looks at the screen and sees, you know, either chairs in front of them or somebody's head, this isn't the perfect way to do it. That's why the sightline analysis is very important. And, you know, again, that will all depend on the size of the screen, the height of the screen, where it's located, how far the seats are away. So this is very important to keep in mind before a room is actually built. So from our perspective, we at least suggest the risers to be a foot, preferably higher if possible, but usually anything below a foot, you're dealing with some issues in terms of proper sightlines. The next thing is just kind of quickly go over some trends in home entertainment that we have seen, you know, especially during these COVID-19 times. We've seen a very, very quick change in terms of what people are using these dedicated theaters for. You know, what we're showing here is actually an actual install that we have done in the past, but what you can see is that you've got multiple different rows and you've got different uses of the theater. You know, people are starting to put exercise bikes into the theater, starting doing gym, yoga, all of that stuff. So in the back, you'll see some exercise bikes. You'll see a bar stool area. The row in front, gaming. Gaming has become a big deal in the theaters as well. And we have the theater seating, and then in the front we have a family sectional sofa that's more used for, you know, casual hanging out and all that stuff. And as you can see in the front, there's also a stage. So, you know, people are using this a lot more in terms of, you know, not just watching theaters, but also having additional stuff in there as well. Here's the actual image of that particular theater. Again, you can see this is obviously a very, very big room, but the intent is just to use it for more than just sitting in your theater chair and watching a movie. It also is used for other purposes as well. This is a view from the back. And the main thing is I think the main reason why this is happening is that people are obviously investing, you know, in a good sound and video quality experiment here. And, you know, obviously other parts of entertainment can be attached to those systems as well. So then in terms of seating styles, so what we have noticed in the last couple of years is there's definitely a trend in combining your traditional high back theater chairs combined with a more of a sofa configuration in the front. You know, again, most of the time, the front row is used more as a casual place where people watch TV, watch sports and all of that stuff. And then once they want to get dedicated on watching a movie, they go to the rows in the back where the traditional high back chairs are. And also design driven, obviously, you know, with new motorized sofas, you know, design is very important. You know, at some point you don't want the seats to be an eyesore in there, but you do want to have a seat that blends very well into the theater, and that usually has a lower backrest to do so. Here's some examples of some of those motorized sofa mechanisms. So the pictures on the left, you'll see, you know, these are traditionally in a closed position. And then at the push of a button, the headrest motorizes up, the footrest comes out, and it really provides you that proper comfort. pictures on the bottom there as well. When they're closed, it looks like a regular sofa, very low back. You know, the whole entire design of the theater can be seen. But at the push of a button, the headrest comes up, the footrest extends, and it turns more into that proper entertainment sofa. These are some more images. This right here is more of a, U-shaped sectional sofa. You know, the three seats in the middle are motorized, and you can actually have that headrest that comes up, the footrest extends, and provides a proper experience. Some more. And here's just some dedicated theater installations. Again, here you'll see more of the low back entertainment sofas that are being used. When you look at these pictures, they look like regular sofas, but the key is motorization is so important. So what happens is the headrest comes up, the footrest comes out, the whole entire chair goes forward, and you really turn a regular sofa into more of an entertainment chair with proper head support, back support, and leg support. Then another very important aspect is technology. There's a lot of technology features these days that are being integrated into theater seating. You know, these are features that are very, very popular and very standard in the high-end automobile industry. And why are they there? They're there for, providing the users more comfort. And we have taken some of those technology features and actually integrated those in the seats to make the overall experience a lot more comfortable. For example, electronic lumbar support, it allows you to have lower back support, the dual motorization with independent control. Again, the fact that you can adjust your seating position to your preferred position is very important. A motorized headrest, we talked about the articulating headrest, but can also be motorized. Integrating wireless and USB charging into these chairs. Obviously, everybody has a mobile device and would like to just charge it while they're watching a movie. That can be done. Presets, memory settings. Automation, which is something that I'll talk about in the next slide, heating, cooling, ventilation, reading lights, swivel trays. There's a lot of different options that can be added to just a regular seat to make the whole entire experience a lot more comfortable. So this is a very unique feature. It's called our automation of chairs. So what this allows you to do is it allows you to integrate the chairs into the third-party control system. So every theater has a control system that controls the lights, the video, the audio, the sound, all of that stuff. What we have done here is we've allowed the chairs to also be controlled by the control system. So the nice, unique feature of that is what you can do is you can have, for example, an all-off button that allows you, when you leave the room, you hit the button and all the chairs close by themselves. So next time when you walk into the room, everything looks perfectly fine. Another very unique thing about that is you can do presets, memory settings, and actually what I'm showing on the next slide here, actually the video, there we go. So this is actually what Jeff has in Boca has in the showroom. This is actually a screenshot of the control panel that shows you how you can now control all of these chairs from the control system. So you can do presets. For example, you've got a reading mode, you've got a sleep mode, you've got a movie watching mode. So instead of having to adjust all of those three motors individually, you just hit one button from the control system and it automatically takes you to that. Similar as you have in a car, you have multiple settings for your seat. You just hit one button and it takes you to that position. It also has the all-off button. You hit the button, all the chairs close by themselves. So this is a very
Lisa Baldwin
new feature to have.
Has left the meeting.
Then, as we were talking, that multi-purpose and media room is becoming a big trend. Obviously, there's a lot of different seating solutions that are being integrated. It's not only your traditional high-back theater chairs anymore. It's a combination of that with sofas, motorized sofas, club chairs, zero-gravity chairs, bar stools. Again, these rooms are becoming more multi-purpose and therefore are bringing in additional type of seats that have to be integrated into the whole entire thing. So this one, for example, is an example of our motorized club chair that pretty much when you look at it, it's just a chair that is on a swivel, it rotates around, but at the push of a button, again, you're turning this into a lot more comfortable seat by the footrest coming out, the backrest going back, and then you still have that articulating headrest. And that's pretty much it. That's just a quick rundown on a few things.
That's great. Awesome. And we do have the scenic chairs here if you guys want to check those out. We swapped our front row to the, it's the Largo, right? The one you had on your early slide?
Correct, yes.
The motorized Largo. Very nice. What I like about it, you can watch a whole movie and like not fall asleep because you're actually being supported in watching the movie comfortably. And you know, the older we get, the more we can't make it through a whole movie. And I think a lot of that is the seat. You just sort of get sucked into a couch. But with these, you're actually, you know, you're there and you're attentive. So they're very, very comfortable. I've watched a number of movies in that theater. So this concludes our presentation. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat box, or if you want to unmute and talk up. But I'll leave it open for a few minutes. Jason, did you have any additional comments?
No, I'll just say that, you know, for anyone that wants to check out the BTA theater, I'd highly advise it. What's cool is when you walk into the space, I mean, you can hear the difference in sound isolation because of the concrete. So that's a good demo. But also when they're done, they can turn on lighting behind the panels and actually show you where all the speakers are located, which is cool because it shows you that behind the scenes. So I would highly advise that. Somebody did put a question in the chat window about the Darth Vader design. Oh, did Darth Vader design the color scheme?
No, that was me. I thought it was private to my wife. I mean, I love that layout, but it was all purple and black. I was like, oh, that's a little weird.
But I think that's a good example, though. I think we've all seen houses with some really rich design and decor, and almost always the theater is totally different from the rest. So, you know, we can do some really cool things, and I think there's been some great examples of that.
There's a real good question in there from Kim Brunetti. The front row sofa seating, generally used for casual seating, watching sports, etc. Absolutely, it can be used for movie theater. It's we actually screwed up when we first made our theater. And what happened is the inspector, because we're commercial, they made us change some things due to ADA, and it kind of messed up our platform design. And it ended up a little bit too close to that front screen, and I just couldn't live with it. And we ended up ripping up the carpet and moving the platform back 6 inches. It made a massive change. And that's when we put in the scenic chairs and got rid of our theater style seating in the front row. It made a world of difference. It's very, very comfortable. And there are different seats for different people. I tend to sit because I'm shorter. So I grew up sort of sitting in the first third of a movie theater. When I walk in, no one wants to be in that front row. They're like way too close. And then other people like to gravitate towards the back. But when we design theaters, we try and sort of average it out so that some people may not like ever to sit in the front, but the judges is, are you moving your head back and forth because the screen is bigger than your field of peripheral vision. And there are SMPTE guidelines for calculating that. And with 235 widescreen, it's obviously a little bit different. But there's what we do, because of some of this is subjective. We actually have a dynamic theater area in our building where we will set up for these kinds of theaters an actual scale replication of a person's proposed room layout. We'll take a theater chair, a screen, a projector, and just say, sit down. This would be exactly like you're in your front row. Let's dim the lights. Let's check it out. Are you comfortable with that? Oh, we can go a little further back, a little closer. And we find that because everyone has some different preferences on that. There are rules of thumb, but it is different per person. So if you're investing this level of money in a room, then I would say definitely do some empirical checking before you lock in your seating. And if not, then I would probably err on moving it back a little bit. So there you go. Anyway, let's see. I don't have any. Was there any other questions? Did that answer what you were looking for there, Kim? Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. Well, let's see. It's about 5 minutes after 12. I think we'll wrap up here. I want to thank everybody for attending, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
All right.
Susan?
All right. Take care,
Has
guys.
left the
Take care.
meeting.